Today, I'm going to share with you how I would feed myself for an entire week in 2025 if I only had $20 to spend. But Mindy, you're standing in a beautiful kitchen. Why do you need to eat for just $20 a week? I don't. I'm 43 years old. My husband and I have been married for almost 20 years. We have been working, saving, planning, budgeting, stewarding our money for the better part of 2 decades, and we have arrived at a point where we have some financial stability. But like most people, that hasn't always been the case. But also, I'm a teacher at heart, which I'm sure you can tell if you watch my channel and the way that I make my videos. And you don't have to be in a specific situation currently to teach about it and to give just helpful, realistic tips. When I was putting together what to purchase for this meal plan, my number one consideration was calories. I really wanted to try to buy enough food that I could get at least 2,000 calories a day for 7 days. My next consideration was nutrition. How much nutrient-dense food can I get and still get 2,000 calories a day on a tight budget? And my next consideration was taste. How can I make palatable food if I only have oil, salt, and pepper? Because it's a little easier to eat food on a budget if it tastes good. I'll be honest and say this meal plan also probably only works if somebody has a stove, or a heat source to cook on, and a refrigerator. I shopped at Walmart for this video, but I think the things that I'm purchasing you can find in some form or fashion in just about any grocery store. I'm starting over in the beans section, and I'm specifically looking at these Hearst's beans. They have several different varieties to choose from, and what I like about them is that they come with the seasoning packet. And since we're so limited with the seasonings that we're using in this meal plan, I'm picking up the Cajun 15 bean soup variety, and I'm also picking up 1 pound of white rice. Heading over to the canned goods, I'm gonna pick up 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste, and then right on the same aisle in my Walmart are the pastas. And I'm looking for 2 pounds. I'm gonna go with just plain old spaghetti, but they have a couple of different varieties in the 2-pound quantity. Now we're heading over to pick up some oats. I found this brand for $1.98. It is a 16-ounce package. There are 11 servings in here. But if you don't wanna do plain oats, there are a few varieties of flavored oatmeal over here. They're in packets, but you would still be able to get some decent nutrition with one of these. Now I'm heading over to the peanut butter, and I can only afford the store brand peanut butter on my budget. And I initially thought I would get the creamy peanut butter, but then I put it back and decided I would go with the crunchy. I kind of want that texture for what I'm gonna use this for, but you could pick up creamy if you prefer it. Now I'm gonna pick up this 2-pound package of popping corn kernels, yellow popcorn kernels in the Great Value brand. This is a fantastic value. I know this seems a little odd for a budget meal challenge, but just hang with me. I'll show you how we're gonna use this. If, however, you don't wanna do the popcorn kernels, they do have 3-count boxes for $1.24. They were out at my Walmart, but you could pick up 2 of those 3-count boxes for about the same price as the 2 pounds of the regular popcorn kernels. I'm gonna pick up half a gallon of milk, and I want the best bang for my buck as far as nutrition goes, so I'm gonna get whole milk because I want the most fat and the most calories that I can get for the price that I'm paying. And speaking of a source of fat, I am gonna pick up 1 pound of this pork sausage. I'm gonna use it in a couple of different recipes. The higher fat content is gonna be spread out across multiple servings, but it's gonna add a lot of flavor to the dishes. Plus, it's already seasoned. Now the bananas did look a little picked over the day that I was there shopping, but I managed to find 4 pretty good looking ones. These were pretty big, right around 2 pounds altogether. And the Roma tomatoes have been 98 cents a pound for years at my Walmart. These were kind of small, so I picked up 8 of them, and it was right around 1.5 pounds. This is what my cart looked like when I was finished shopping, and it rang up right at my $20 budget. So let me show you now how I'm gonna use this to get 28 meals and snacks for the week. Breakfast. We've got oats, we've got milk, we've got peanut butter, and we have some bananas. And there are lots of different ways that you can prepare your oats. You can cook them on the stove and then add the peanut butter and the banana afterward. If you have a blender, you can also turn them into a smoothie. Since it's summertime, I decided to do some overnight oats because I thought cold oats sounded good. I bought a large enough package of oats that there's enough to have about 1.5 servings every day for 7 days. So I put 3/4 of a cup of oats into a mason jar. I added about half of a sliced up banana to give it a little sweetness, and then I filled it to the top with milk and popped that into the fridge until the next day. The next morning I took it out of the fridge, and you can at this point heat it up if you want to and then add the peanut butter. I decided to just put a big old dollop of peanut butter on the top and stir it in, and that was breakfast. Very easy, very quick to prepare, lots of different preparation options if you want to have cold or you want to have hot, and very filling. Because I'm using whole milk, I'm getting some protein in this breakfast. Because I am using some peanut butter, I'm getting some fat. I mean, depending on how much peanut butter you add to your bowl, and there's enough to have 2 full servings of peanut butter a day in that jar, you're getting around 600 to 700 calories in this breakfast. For lunches, we're doing a Cajun style rice and beans. I looked on the package of the Hearst Cajun beans that I bought for a little bit of direction. I decided to go ahead and soak my beans overnight. And then I decided to use the slow cooker to cook my beans, but if you don't have a slow cooker, you can cook them on the stove. The directions are right there on the package. But especially if you're cooking them on the stove, I recommend soaking them overnight because it cuts down the cook time tremendously. You don't have to do this, but I decided to add some flavor to the beans that I was gonna use a little bit of the pork sausage that I purchased. So I cut off about 1/3 of that 1 pound of sausage and I browned that up. When the sausage was fully cooked, I added my beans and the seasoning packet that it came with, and then the amount of water that it suggested on the package. It was around 8 to 10 cups. I cooked mine on low and they were done after 3 to 4 hours. And then I just cooked up some rice to go along with it. My rice package is 10 servings, so you could have almost 1.5 servings of white rice a day. The beans make 17 servings, so you can have over 2 servings. I did not add any more salt and pepper to the beans while they were cooking. I added it to my bowl once I had fixed it according to my personal taste. And then you have a lunch that's like over 500 calories and around 15 grams of fiber. And if you're worried about prepping this meal all at once, 7 servings to eat across 7 days, you could cut it in half. You could cook half the beans on the front half of the week and then half the beans in the middle of the week for the second half. Same goes for the rice. You could make up the rice like 1 serving at a time each day as you eat it. If you have access to a freezer, you could freeze some and then bring it out in the middle of the week to thaw and eat, or even freeze it in individual servings in freezer safe containers. In a lot of my budget cooking videos, especially extreme ones like this is not meant to be a sustainable way of eating and living. This is meant to be something that gets you through kind of a temporary tight spot. Let me give you an example of when this happened in my life. When I was 22 years old, I had just graduated from college and I got my first teaching job. I started teaching in August, but I did not get paid until the end of September. I worked over 6 weeks before I actually saw a paycheck. Now, hopefully we have saved up a little money to get through the in-between, but sometimes as a fresh out of college student, that's just not the case. And also, hopefully we have some friends and relatives and neighbors who can help us out. But having something like this could be really helpful in a situation like that, especially when we know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Things are going to get better very soon. We just have to kind of make it through this very temporary tight spot. If you find yourself or someone you know finds themselves in a situation where you are suffering from food insecurity consistently, I hope that you will reach out for help. There are lots of organizations in communities that you can reach out to, churches, local municipalities. There are government subsidies and assistance for these types of situations. That's what it's there for. And if you don't find yourself in that kind of situation, I hope that you will find a way to contribute to organizations that do help with food and housing insecurity. And I'm talking about money. Cash money, because they have more wholesale buying power than we do. They can get better quality and more food with our cash than we can. They don't want what's left over at the back of our pantry. If you have the ability to give a little money to those organizations so that they can provide for people, I know that they can make it go a long way. Dinner, a tried and true budget meal, spaghetti, but we're gonna make it so delicious because I'm gonna make that sauce mostly from scratch. I started off by browning the rest of my pork sausage. And while that was browning, I took the tomatoes that I purchased, the fresh tomatoes, I cut off the ends and cut them in half and just took the inside, the seedy part out. And yes, I did take the ends of those tomatoes and slice off as much as I could so I could keep as much of the tomato for the sauce. Once my sausage was done cooking, I added my 6-ounce can of tomato paste. You could add a little bit of oil, salt, and pepper here according to your taste preferences. And then I filled that 6-ounce can up with water 4 times and added it to the pot. That's 24 ounces ounces, or the equivalent of 3 cups of water. Once I had stirred that to sufficiently combine everything, I added my tomatoes. I did not worry about dicing these up into little pieces because we're gonna simmer this sauce, and those tomatoes are basically going to completely deconstruct and fall apart in the sauce. So once I brought that to a simmer, I just turned it down to low and popped the lid on it, and I let it simmer on low for about an hour. When I came back to this, it smelled amazing. Those fresh tomatoes had started to break down. You could use like a potato masher or something to mash them up, but for me, just the back of the wooden spoon I was using to stir this with was enough to kind of smash them up and incorporate them more into the sauce. Now, I purchased 2 pounds of spaghetti. That is 16 servings of spaghetti, so you have more than enough to have a double serving every day for 7 days. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize about pasta is that a typical serving of even just store brand dry pasta has 7 or 8 grams of protein. So a double serving is gonna give you, 14, 15, 16 grams of protein just from the pasta. This meal is so satisfying because not only is it filling because of the pasta, it is very flavorful because of the fat that the sausage renders and adds to the sauce while it simmers. And this meal, depending on how much pasta you use in each serving, could come out to over 700 calories and around 25 grams of protein, despite the fact that we are using very little meat. Now with the spaghetti, it's sort of the same situation with the beans. You could prep it all at once, maybe freeze a few servings to pull out later in the week. You could cut the recipe in half and prepare half of it at the beginning of the week and half of it in the middle of the week. You could just prepare the sauce and keep some of it in the freezer if you want it to be super fresh later in the week, and then just prepare, your 2 servings of pasta each day. Those are just some ideas I'm throwing out. You can decide which you feel is best and which you feel is safe for your food preparation, considering the amenities that you have available to you. And if you are a snacker, have no fear. I do have you covered in this meal plan. And you might be wondering why I spent a little over 10% of my $20 budget on 2 pounds of popcorn kernels. But remember, my number 1 objective was calories. My number 1 consideration was calories. And there are 110 calories for every 2 tablespoons of these popcorn kernels, and there are 27 servings in here. So if you were to pop up 2 servings, you're getting around 220 calories, and even more if you are popping it in oil. And my second consideration was nutrition. And each serving of these popcorn kernels, according to the package, has 6 grams of fiber. And since I had to go kind of light on the fruits and vegetables for this meal plan, I was looking for ways to get fiber in a less expensive way. And there's lots of different ways to make this. Even if you don't have an air popper, or you don't have a microwave popper, or even a brown paper sack to pop this up in the microwave, you can make popcorn on the stove. And I gotta tell you, if you can learn how to safely pop popcorn in oil on the stove, you will thank yourself. It is the most delicious popcorn you will ever eat. I recently learned how to do this. We were staying in an Airbnb and we didn't have a lot of snacky things available, and I noticed in the cupboard that there were popcorn kernels and oil. So I just got on YouTube and I watched a few tutorial videos. I'll leave a couple of those linked down below, and I learned how to pop it on the stove, and I gotta tell you, I have been obsessed since then. I'm still making it, even though we're back home and have a microwave popper. I'm making popcorn in oil in one of my little pans with a lid because it tastes so good. But like I said, do your research and learn how to do it properly if you've never done it before, because cooking with oil can be tricky and can get dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Now let's talk some numbers. If I manage to consume all of the food that I purchase for breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, plus I eat 1 to 2 servings of popcorn a day, I am going to be over 2,000 calories a day. I also could be getting over 80 grams of protein, and that's pretty impressive considering how little dairy and meat we used in this meal plan. I wish I could have squeezed in more fruits and vegetables. I only got a little bit from the tomatoes and the bananas, but I'm still getting over 30 grams of fiber a day. And as a 43-year-old woman, I'm supposed to get at least 25. So I'm still in a pretty good range. I hope this video was helpful or just interesting. And if you want to see more like it, you can check out one of these videos here, or there is a playlist of budget cooking videos in my description box below. And make sure that you are subscribed, and I'll catch you in the next one.